Hello, and welcome to the Crypto Beat, where we discuss what's happening right now in the crypto space. My name's Tim Copeland, and I'm the editor-in-chief of The Block. Joining me today, we have Adrian Stern, co-founder and CEO of Reveel. Welcome to the show. How are we doing?
I'm good. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on. So before we get into your project and what it does, I have to ask you about the most topical thing that's been happening recently right now in crypto. Over the weekend, we saw Donald and Melania Trump launching their own meme coins. Donald said that, he's at least aware he launched one, even if he doesn't know a lot more than that. But it had a huge impact, shot up to a huge market cap. What was your reaction when you saw this happen?
I think it's, to be frank, I think it's a double-edged sword. And taking the politics out of it, I think there's some good for the crypto space. It's obviously bringing a lot of visibility to it. I think there is a risk, though. Meme coins can be a risky investment for retail investors, and crypto has had a fairly delicate image in part because of the risk associated to it. And so I think that is sort of the potential downside to it. Obviously, it sends a very strong signal in terms of his endorsement of the industry. And I think that's sort of the bright light that I'm looking at.
And what impact do you think it has on the crypto space?
I mean, clearly bringing visibility to it, right? Those who weren't aware of crypto are probably have heard now of Trump's coin. And so that's, that might be a positive overall. I think the other point was what I was mentioning, the signal, of his endorsements and what that will mean in terms of regulation in the space and the ability to continue to drive innovation. You can perhaps juxtapose this to what we're seeing in Europe with MiCA and a much sort of restrictive regulatory landscape. This could potentially show that in the US, we'll have a much more open type of regulatory landscape for companies to innovate in.
Do you think there's anything that could go wrong with the president having a token tied to him for his whole presidency?
Sure. I think a lot of things could go wrong, and I'll stay away from the politics of it. But there's obviously a lot of risk associated to that.
Yeah. Okay. Now, the reason I chose to set up this episode was I saw a post of yours on LinkedIn where you joked about a typical conversation of trying to pay someone in crypto. It was which stablecoin to use, which blockchain, the need to bridge funds, and all of that chaos and confusion. And I think it's something we've all experienced. But you seem to suggest you have some sort of solution to this problem.
Yeah. What we realized, we've been now in sort of the stablecoin payment space for a while. What we've realized is that a lot of users are basically siloed, right? They prefer a specific stablecoin. That might be USDT, USDC, or obviously the most common ones. They usually want to have their assets on a specific chain, or at least they have a preferred chain. And that creates silos, right? You might have one user who wants to have USDT on the BNB chain, another that prefers having USDC on Base or Solana. How do these people transact, right? Today, a user needs to swap or bridge funds, potentially even use a different wallet, depending on the environments they're on, before they can transact easily with someone else. And so, we've had this peer-to-peer payments application live for a little bit over a year now, and we were realizing that a lot of users were swapping or bridging funds before doing a transaction. And we started inquiring, sort of wanting to understand that behavior. And what we realized is that users, and you might have had this experience, right? When you're transacting with someone, you're often texting with them before to make sure that they'll accept that specific stablecoin, that you can send them the funds on that, whatever chain that is, and that you have the right wallet for that specific network. And so that back and forth, obviously creates a lot of friction and delays in terms of being able to execute the transaction. You've got to basically agree on what rails you're going to use to transact. And so we thought that was a really interesting issue to try to tackle. And what we've come up with is this concept of a pay ID which is a universal stablecoin ID. And so we're rolling that out with Reveal. The goal is that, if I want to send you funds, it should be as simple as me tagging you and sending you whatever I have. And that might be, let's say USDC on Base. And on the end, if you prefer receiving USDT on BNB chain, then that's what you'll receive. And so we're really abstracting not just the chains, but also the stable coins to create this unified payment experience on top of all these different stable coins and networks. And so yeah, that's what we're rolling out. It's gotten a lot of I think eyeballs because it's a fairly common issue for people who are in the space, and we're super excited to bring that to market.
So how does that work, like, more specifically? So is it like you have USTD and you just give that one pay ID, or is it like if you have USTD on a specific network that will get one ID, then the same stablecoin on a different network will get a different ID, and then you basically, is it essentially like an official sort of labeling system, and then that makes it easier for protocols to sort of know which is the right tokens to swap for? Is that sort of the idea?
Yeah, so the way we've gone about this is, basically you as a user get payment ID, a single username that you can use for payments. Behind that username, you can create preferences, right? And a preference might be, what? I don't care to have USDT. I want to have USDC, and I would prefer having it on Base. So if I have any USDT incoming, automatically bridge or swap that to USDC and deliver it on Base in this wallet. You could set another rule which might be more specific, something like if Reveal is paying me any stablecoin, that's my salary, I want it automatically off ramp to my bank account, right? So a user can establish these preferences, and we have a sort of whole ecosystem of partners that we're working with on the back end to facilitate those swaps, those bridges, and basically bring liquidity to this solution. And that is what creates this really smooth experience where you might just tag me, Adrian Stern, send me the funds, and on the back end, based on my preferences, I'll be receiving what I want.
How does the user manage the like potential fees of this kind of situation if you sort of automatically always wanted to swap to Base and people kept paying you money on the main net? Your fees are going to be quite high, and that can really build up over time, especially if it was like lots of micropayments.
Yeah. Look, the bridging process and swaps are still fairly expensive. Obviously, when we're talking about stable coins, that is becoming cheaper, and there are more and more solutions. If you're talking about USDC on one chain to USDC on a different chain, right? CCTP is a pretty good solution, and fees can really be brought down, and that's part of what we're working on. The first version of the protocol that we're shipping in the next few weeks is a proof of concept, but we're already working on the V2 to really make sure that on the most common routes we can bring fees to a minimum, and that's due to work with different liquidity partners that we're bringing into the ecosystem.
So ultimately, basically, the issue is that you're having to work with the fees that exist in cross-chain, which is quite an expensive thing. And I would have thought that would be quite a potentially limiting factor, especially if it's for like a new person and they're like, wait, why am I losing all this money in like fees?
Yeah. Again, it really depends on which networks you're bridging from, right? I think that as we see more and more adoption of L2s, obviously that helps drastically on fees. So yeah, I see that improving pretty significantly over the next year or two, and eventually I think as this fragmentation issue around stablecoins becomes more aware to the industry, I think we'll keep seeing an improvement around the ability to to swap tokens, stablecoins. So I'm pretty bullish on fees going down around, at least around stablecoin type of bridges and swaps.
And is the platform centralized or decentralized and custodial or non-custodial?
Yeah, so the great point about how we're building the infrastructure around Reveal Pay ID is it's very modular in a sense, and so a user doesn't need to have a Reveal wallet. They can plug in any wallet they want on the back end, and that can be a custodial account at Coinbase or Binance, or it can be a non-custodial wallet, a MetaMask wallet, a Phantom wallet, whatever the user wants, right? In terms of how we manage data, this first version is fairly centralized, but we're building towards increased decentralization, so that that protocol can be leveraged by anyone who wants to integrate Pay ID.
And you said about setting up like rules for it to follow. Is this related to intents? Obviously, that's been a bit of a talking point for a while now.
Yeah, for sure. This is really sort of the essence of how Pay ID came to be. We were looking at what is the gap, if you will, between a payments intent, which is really simple, right? I want to send you $20. That's the intent. The reality of that transaction is I need to communicate with you. We need to agree on what stablecoin, what chain we're going to transact on. Then I might need to swap or bridge funds. I might need to use a different wallet even before I can do the transaction, right? So all these steps within the transaction are what contribute to that gap between a very simple payments intent to a very fairly complex reality of an actual sort of payments mechanism. So it is very much sort of an intense type of infrastructure that we're building.
And what's been sort of like the number one use case that you've seen people using on the platform so far?
Yeah, so we are rolling it out through our own peer-to-peer payments application, and that's been sort of the initial use case, if you will. The Reveal application being the first client built on top of the Pay ID infrastructure. But since announcing it in mid-December, we've gotten a lot of very exciting partnerships lined up. These are in gaming, they're in social, and they're also in AI. And we think there's a really strong use case for Pay ID to be embedded into the AI agent stack, if you will, and allow agent to agent transactions, right? Specifically, as we're seeing, agent stacks built for Base or for Solana or now for the Binance Smart Chain, being able to facilitate transactions between agents that might be on different networks seems like a great and very interesting use case to us. So, yeah, gaming, social, AI are sort of the initial sectors that we're seeing a lot of traction for Pay ID. But I think that it's a very sort of applicable concept that could be embedded into wallets, into exchanges, pretty much anywhere where you would want to embed and allow users to have very simple peer-to-peer transactions.
Yeah, the crypto AI stuff is really fascinating. I think it was Rise Labs' Matthew Graham who said recently they're putting pretty much all of their focus on crypto and AI projects. What's your take on how that space is evolving?
It's so early. I think we're seeing some really cool experiments. Um, I think that it's probably going to change drastically between where we are today and where we'll be at the end of the year. The capabilities of these agents, I think, will keep getting better, and also the amount of human involvement necessary to sort of establish guardrails for these agents will probably decrease, and we'll start seeing actually very autonomous agents performing. I think today you still need a certain degree of sort of human implication to make sure an agent doesn't go off the rails, and that I'm pretty bullish that will decrease pretty quickly. So I think we're going to see a whole lot of improvements around that, as well as a whole lot of sort of companies that were not looking at this space wanting to offer their products as skills for these agents. And that's sort of very much how we're looking at it at Reveal, in terms of offering Pay ID as a capability, a plug-in, if you will, that an agent can adopt. And I think we'll see a lot of companies sort of want to offer their services to agents in a sense.
So with Pay ID, you say it's more for like almost identifying each user. Does it include their preferences? So like, will my pay ID come with it the preference that I want to be paid on a certain coin on a certain network?
Yeah, exactly. So anywhere where the Reveal APIs will be integrated, a user can tag you, and those preferences will come up, and whatever they're sending, will be matched against your preferences, and you'll be able to receive what you want to receive. And so what's interesting about that is it really creates this sort of embedded peer-to-peer payments experience that can be accessed in any application. And, a parallel that I think of is sort of what Zelle has done in the US in sort of traditional banking, allowing, a Bank of America user to easily transact with a Chase user. And I think we sort of need that in crypto, right? Where we're starting to see sort of these walled gardens pop up. And how do we make sure that users can transact with each other across these different silos is very much sort of what we're focused on. And that means that a user needs to be able to access or trigger transactions within the Reveal Pay ID network, sort of no matter where they are, right? So being able to have your preferences as a user be referenced wherever pay ID can be used is crucial.
So where does this sort of like list of information exist? As in, you've got the pay IDs, you've got the associated wallets, you've got the preferences, and it must be sort of like publicly available. Is this sort of exist? You said it's more centralized at the moment, like just on a centralized server with an API. And like, do you plan to make it more like potentially more like an ENS system where it's like it's all publicly available or actually on the blockchain?
Yeah, so indeed, we're starting in a fairly centralized way. That data is available through APIs, and we're working towards decentralization. I think you know we've been studying some of the sort of frameworks that were put forward, and A16Z has had some really great frameworks around this of working sort of towards progressive decentralization, and we thought that was sort of an approach that made a lot of sense for what we're building. I think as a startup, starting in a more centralized way allows you to test ideas a lot more quickly and understand how you need to shape the infrastructure and the solution before you can truly bring it to a more decentralized type of architecture. You need to be sure that you're building it the right way, right? And so as a early stage company, that gives us that degree of flexibility. But the goal is very much for this to be a decentralized solution. I think we, as a team, really buy into sort of the concepts that have made crypto attractive to us, which is this ability to not have intermediaries and to be, really decentralized.
And then right now you're only on EVM networks. Do you plan to add support for other chains like Solana?
Yeah, for sure. It's on the roadmap. In the coming months, we'll be rolling out to non-EVM networks. Most likely, as soon as the V2 of the protocol comes out, we'll already have non-EVM networks integrated there.
Do you imagine Trump will be getting a pay ID anytime soon?
I hope he does. I hope he does. I think everyone should. So definitely encourage him if he's listening to come claim his pay ID at reveal.id for sure.
Yeah. And how does it work in terms of linking? Let's say if you had different networks that aren't compatible, you'd have to link a couple of other different addresses to a single pay ID. Can you list multiple, or is it like limited to one?
Yeah, it's really super simple. You claim your ID, and then you have sort of your dashboard. You can connect different wallets. You could actually even add a wallet that's not yours as an endpoint if you wanted, and then you can create routes. Users will have the ability to have sub IDs, and this is where potentially having an external wallet can be interesting. If you wanted to, create a sub ID for donations for an organization that you want to support, being able to link funds directly to someone else's wallet. And so Adrian parentheses ID would be my main ID. I could have Adrian parentheses donations that links to the Red Cross if I wanted to. And so behind all of these IDs or sub IDs I might have, I can create these routes, right, and these preferences in terms of what I want to receive, what stablecoin on what chain, and obviously in which wallet. Yeah, so it's a very sort of modular solution. At least initially, we give all those controls to the user. I think it'll be interesting to see as more people come in, perhaps less crypto native users. What are some of the sort of default settings that we need to put in place? But initially, that's super modular with the ability to add as many wallets as you want.
And then with intents, have you like experimented much with them on like other projects, other platforms?
Yeah, I always like sort of looking around at what the industry's doing and what other companies are doing. I think we've seen of a lot of intense sort of based engines around swaps and bridges. I think this is sort of where it has started. I think it's interesting to see how that's evolving into different areas, trading, payments, what we're doing. I'm sure there are other use cases, but what we're calling intense is really just abstraction and simplifying the user experience, right? And so I think that it's just showing that the crypto industry is maturing in terms of user experience, and that's going to allow for more users to participate as we make this technically more available.
Talking of the industry maturing, what's your take on the changes happening at the Ethereum Foundation?
I think I think it's a tough spot that they're in. I think there's definitely a good use case or case to make, I should say, around them being more proactive in terms of pushing Ethereum out and doing more marketing and bringing awareness really to the ecosystem and to the technology. I think what's tough is that adoption is clearly moving towards the L2s. The ability to have much lower fees is crucial, and I think the Ethereum Foundation needs to think about sort of what is their role in terms of fostering not just use of the L1, but really the entire EVM ecosystem. And I think if I were participating in those conversations, that's probably what I would sort of push for.
Yeah. Do you think it should be using tools like, for instance, should it be staking its holdings, that sort of thing?
It's a good question. I'm not sure I have a strong position in that regards. I think that what it should be focused on is really how do we build confidence in the protocol, in the environment, and attract developers, right? In the end, that is what's going to allow for the entire ecosystem to continue to grow and strive. So whatever it needs to do in terms of managing its own liquidity, as long as it sort of pushes those goals forward, I think that is what's needed.
Hmm. Has it been has it affected like morale in any way in terms of sort of building within the Ethereum space when like sort of all of the excitement and I think financial gain has been more in sort of either Bitcoin or Solana ecosystems, and like because you've had the ETFs on one side and then you've got the meme coins on the other, and Ethereum's felt a little bit left out, which is why I think there was sort of been this sort of reaction about the EF.
It's an interesting point. I'm not sure it has. I mean, the counter example would be Base, right? Like Base has had an amazing year last year. They've grown like crazy, and so I think that I think it's more about like how do you brand your specific chains. Solana has done a great job. Obviously, Bitcoin has had an amazing run and will continue to as sort of the main crypto asset. But I don't think that the success of either Bitcoin or Solana takes away from the ability for any EVM chain to succeed. And I guess Base would be the main example for that. It's really about how do you foster an environment of developers and applications that want to build on your network. If Base has been able to do it, I don't see why other EVM chains wouldn't, right? As long as you sort of put in the resources needed to make that attractive and available.
And then something I saw recently, someone was posting about the idea of Ethereum adding the ability to create like native L2s, like in the same way you can create tokens on Ethereum, would be sort of like being able to create an L2 on Ethereum that's natively designed to work with it. Do you think things like that could help make the sort of, right now the cross-chain space is pretty complicated, it's quite expensive. Do you think something like that could be beneficial?
I think that I think it's challenging because the app chains do continue to bring fragmentation, right? Like the more networks we have, the more fragmented the space is going to be, and the more important interoperability between the networks becomes. And that's the same for tokens, right? The more tokens we have, the more liquidity pools we need in order to facilitate exchange between different tokens. So the degree of fragmentation that we're seeing is almost exponential as we continue to launch new networks, chain apps, etc. So I think that the interoperability space is one that is going to have to grow significantly in order to bring mass adoption into crypto. A user today doesn't want to be locked into, or doesn't necessarily understand why they're locked into a single application or can't move assets from one app to another. It's almost like if your emails could only stay within Gmail, right? And you weren't able to send an email to someone that had Outlook or whatnot. That just doesn't make sense to the end user. And so interoperability is going to have to be solved for. And I think that's what motivates us at Reveel in terms of at least payments specifically, in being able to create sort of this network of interoperability for stablecoin payments. And I'm sure we're going to see that, happening around different types of assets. I think it's not unlikely that we start seeing interoperability solutions that are a bit more sort of sector specific. I could imagine sort of an interop protocol that focuses on gaming, right? And how do you make sure that assets from a game on a specific network or on a specific app chain can be traded with assets on a different app chain or different network? So I think that right now crypto is almost seen as sort of one big industry. As it matures, it's going to get more sector specific. We're starting to see that with payments, and I think we'll start seeing it in other sectors as well.
What would be your sort of like dream UX or sort of environment in terms of people being able to like move their crypto, make payments with crypto? Like, what's your sort of vision for what we want to try and achieve?
Yeah, I think the two criterias that I would put forward as the most important are the simplicity of the experience and the decentralization, right? If we can combine those two, then we've succeeded. Because today simplicity is often related to a centralized solution. I mean, the easiest way to trade is through centralized exchanges. But obviously you don't own your keys. So to some degree, you can't control your own assets. And decentralized solutions today are still more complex and require, a bit more sort of user involvement in terms of the experience. Once we're able to combine those two, I think we'll have a really great solution that sort of accomplishes what the core mission of crypto is, if you will.
And what's the biggest obstacle to getting to that point?
Yeah, I think there are several, right? The security element requires educating users around, self custodial solutions. And obviously there are sort of technical and product challenges in terms of how do we make self-custodial solutions as simple as possible. I think there's been a lot of progress there with MPCs and these types of wallets. So that's positive. We're making great progress in terms of wallet abstraction. I'd say chain abstraction is sort of the next, big thing we need to sort of check. We're getting there. There are obviously some great protocols, be it Wormhole, Layer Zero, etc., that are starting to facilitate all of that. And obviously then sort of user solutions on top of that, be it Reveal Pay ID or other bridges and swap solutions. So chain abstraction is starting to get better, but we still need to, I think we still need to push that a bit more. And then eventually it'll be sort of token level abstraction, right? I mean, when we look at payment specifically, I think of stablecoin abstraction. What that means is that for an end user, $1 is $1, and it shouldn't really matter whether it's USDC, USDT, PYUSD, RLUSD, or whatnot. The user just wants $1. And so I think sort of token abstraction will be sort of the next frontier in terms of facilitating the user experience. And as long as we can facilitate all these levels by still providing real decentralized and self-custodial solutions, then we're in a really good spot.
Is there some risk in terms of when you say like every stablecoin should be kind of treated the same, because you've got historical examples, obviously in the most extreme case UST, but then there have been other examples where you've had stablecoins depeg, and some sort of like Athena, you could argue like their stablecoins may be a little bit different from like DAI or from Tether. Like, can you just bundle them all into one, or are there
it's a great question. I think that most likely you can't necessarily bundle them into just one. I think it'll be probably use case related, right? What is a sort of a stable coin or a payment stable coin, right? Transactional stable coin versus sort of a yield bearing stable coin that might be more relevant to or related to like a savings type of or investment type of account, right? So I think I would look at it from a use case sort of lens. And I think that within the use cases, then it's doesn't matter so much which stablecoin you have, right? As long as you can accomplish what you're trying to accomplish from a user perspective. So I think you're right. There are some distinctions, but they're more use case related than, let's say, coin specific.
And then a small thing related to the platform. I gave it a little try out today, and I noticed that when you sign up, you have to copy a private key down. It doesn't give you a seed phrase. Do you think at some point you might make it so that people get seed phrases?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. So you were signing up to our peer-to-peer payments application, so when a user signs up, we do create a wallet for them on the back end. They can connect other wallets after that into the app. So for the Reveal wallet today, we still sort of ask them to copy the seed phrase. The private key. Moving towards the seed phrase, I think makes a lot of sense. The Reveal wallet is really meant to be there sort of as a default. We actually encourage users to to add existing wallets they might already have, and we see most of our users do that and then transact on top of them. It's sort of a default or a backup situation with the Reveal wallet.
And what's the sort of rough time frame on like the full PayID launch?
Yeah, we are literally a few weeks away. I think we'll start rolling out PayID before the end of the month. And we've got a massive wait list. Over 100,000 people have signed up already. And so we'll be giving them access initially. Today, PayID is being tested by about 800 of our sort of beta group in the Reveal application. But as we roll it out, PayID will have its own sort of dashboard where you can claim your ID, connect wallets, create those routes, and then obviously search for anyone else who's got a PayID and send them funds. So that is all coming in the next few weeks.
Cool. And with Trump back in power, do you feel like more liberated in terms of like what you can build in crypto, as in like being less worried that the SEC is going to come after you if you like add staking features or something?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that from a regulatory perspective, this administration is gonna be on the side of letting innovation sort of go to market, right? I think uh, regulators always have this sort of this two sides they need to balance: protecting consumers and fostering innovation and growth within the industry. Clearly in Europe, they've always had sort of a focus that is more on protecting consumers, and that has often had a negative impact on the ability to bring innovation to market and therefore for those specific sectors to grow. I think in the US, we tend to lean the other way, and this administration is clearly showing that they're leaning pretty strongly towards the other way. And so I think that's going to be positive for startups in the crypto space. I think obviously the risk, and this sort of circles back to your initial question around Trump's meme coin, is that there's also a lot of space for bad actors to to put projects that really hurt the end consumer and therefore the reputation of the industry. And so I think for those building in the space and who want crypto to succeed in the long run, there's obviously an effort there in terms of making sure that we can promote projects that are legitimate and that are providing value to end users. And I think that's something we're very focused on.
All right. Well, that's all we have for today. I want to thank Adrian for joining for this episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, make sure to follow the Crypto Beat on Twitch and Spotify. Subscribe to the Block Pods on YouTube. As a reminder, our newsroom works tirelessly to get you accurate, informed crypto news. If you want to stay ahead, make sure to read the block. Stay informed on crypto. Thanks, and see you next time.
Thanks, Tim.